Hi, it's Hope and welcome to the video. As you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, this is going to be book rack set in school, I think is what I'm titling this. But yeah, so these are just like, I don't know, I was randomly thinking, I was like, video ideas. I need something to film because I've been kind of in a creativity slump, and then I thought, hey, it's back to school season now. Like I go back to school to finish up my final couple high school classes in like less than 2 weeks. I know that universities are starting and just schools kind of in like North America are kind of starting here, like either they've started or they'll be starting up within the next like week or two. So I figured here are some racks. We're gonna start with like YA and then we're gonna get to new adult. So I'm gonna kind of do two parts. If I remember, I will leave a timestamp of when we start the YA and when we start the new adult if you're looking for something specific, although I'm not really going into too much details about a lot of these books because we'll be here all day. So I'm just gonna give you I'll just end up giving you like a 1 or 2 line description of the book. So yeah, so we are gonna start with YA. So the first one is the only fantasy at all on, well, fantasy slash paranormal on any of these lists. We'll get that right out of the way. And obviously Crave by Tracy Wolff. It takes place in a boarding school in rural Alaska that is full of paranormal creatures, and we follow Grace, who she ends up having to go to this boarding school after her parents pass away and her uncle runs the boarding school, and Grace does not know that it's for paranormal creatures. And yeah, I love the series. I always will recommend it. You can see the phone in the reflection. Haha. But yeah, I will always recommend it. Obviously, Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. It literally the only reason the characters get together is because they are placed in the same like form group. We follow Nick and Charlie as they meet, become friends, and fall for each other. Obviously, so I had to recommend this. Literally, if you are watching my channel and you have not at least given the first graphic novel a shot, please do. Next is I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. This we follow Ben, who comes out to their parents as non-binary, gets kicked out of the house, and ends up having to go live with their sister. And it's them just kind of trying to find a place within this school and like make friends and all of that. This I love it so much. I should do a reread of it soon. But I highly recommend it. I mean, I highly recommend all of these books, but when in doubt, I'm gonna save that because I'm crazy. Next is Loveless by Alice Oseman. In this, basically we follow Georgia, who she's going off to university for her first year, and she's kind of like falling out with friends a little bit because they're off starting relationships, and she's just kind of like doesn't feel like doing that kind of stuff, and it's her kind of journey of discovering that she is aromantic and asexual, and I really enjoyed this. And also, yeah, there's 2 Alice Oseman books on this list so far. It's fine. The next 2 for the YA section, well, one is technically like new adult, but it reads kind of YA, so I'm including it in this, is Tears in the Water by Margarita Scilia? I'm butchering that name, I'm sorry. But this basically takes place in university, and we are following Alex and Tate. Alex has extreme anxiety, is on the swim team, and is just trying to survive their like first year at university. I believe it's their first year. And then through Alex's roommate, they meet Tate, who is on the volleyball team, and the 2 of them kind of just slowly become friends, and then a romantic relationship kind of forms, and the entire book is pretty much just Alex dealing with like anxiety, and then there's also an entire like gender crisis, and I loved it. And it obviously takes place in university, so yeah. And the final book in the YA section is Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez. This basically, I cannot remember the main character's name for the life of me, but basically she runs kind of an anonymous like dating tip advice out of this locker, And one day this boy finds out that she's running it and almost blackmails her of like, give him dating advice and help him get back with his ex, or else he'll tell everybody she's the one running it. That's basically the gist of it. And I read this like maybe almost 3 years ago. I can't remember if it was 2020 or 2021. I can't remember for the life of me. I want to say it was 2021, so it was probably about 2 years ago that I read it. Really liked it. So yeah. And now moving on to the like new adult. So if you skipped through the YA, hi. If you've watched the YA, let's just move on to the new adult. So the first book is Trick 6 Venom by Penelope Douglas. Basically in this is a sapphic romance where we're following Clay and Liv. Clay is like a rich girl that could have everything she ever wanted, and Liv lives on the other side of the tracks, is poor, and the only reason she's able to go to this like rich school is because of a scholarship, and they don't really like each other. They're on the same like lacrosse team, but otherwise they don't really like each other. But then something switches and they kind of start to have this like hate, love, lust type relationship. So yeah. The next is Not Quite Out by Louise Willingham. This takes place in university, and we are following Will and Dan, and they basically kind of become friends, and then slowly like romantic feelings start to surface, but Will is kind of having trouble coming out to his like friends, and Dan is dealing with the aftermath of like recovering from addiction and an abusive relationship. And so it's very emotional and very heavy with topics, but it's a cute romance too, and yeah. The next is The Vauxhall Court by Nora Sakovic. If you know me, it would have been shocker not to have this in this. But this basically, we follow Neil, who ends up getting a opportunity to play Exie in university. Exie is basically like lacrosse meets hockey, but really violent and all that. And Neil is originally hesitant because this might put him in the spotlight. And he's on the run from his father, who is a bad man. But he says, fuck it, joins the team, and we go from there. And this is definitely one where it's like, check the fucking trigger warnings. Honestly, for any of the books after this, check trigger warnings. Check trigger warnings, honestly. The next is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. I own a copy, but I lended it to my friend, so I don't have it right now. But this basically, we follow Ryan and Misha, and basically they, in 5th grade, were assigned pen pals for like a school project, and they kept on doing it until one day Misha randomly decides not to respond, and then a couple months later, Misha ends up switching schools to Ryan's school, but under a fake alias, and eventually they end up together. That's a really bad explanation, but it's the gist of it. And obviously it takes place in high school, but it's dark, and yeah, I love it. Next is Torn Apart by Kay Webster and Nikki Ash. I almost forgot the authors. And this is a MMMF choose, where, how do I describe this book? It's literally as it states, like everybody ends up with each other. You're following, I want to say one of the guys is Ashton, who for the longest time thinks he's gay and then falls for his best friend, I'm brain farting on her name, and then also Ashton's roommate Drew, I think is his name, and Drew's childhood best friend, I can't remember the other guy's fucking name. I want to say it starts with a B, but I literally have no other clue besides that. I should have looked up names before. I'm stupid. But it takes place in university. I think 3 of them are in like their 2nd year of university, and then Drew is like an assistant coach for the men's hockey team at the school, I think. If I remember things correctly, I binged the both books in like 2 days, so it's a lot of a blur. Next is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, which basically we follow Nate and Anastasia. I don't actually know how it's pronounced. I'll say Anastasia because that's what my brain wants to call her. We'll go with it. Basically, Nate is a hockey player and Anastasia is a figure skater. Something happens with the hockey players' practice rink, so they end up having to practice with the figure skaters. They can share the rink, and Nate and Anastasia kind of don't like each other for part of the book, and then they kind of end up becoming friends, and then that friends turns into friends to benefits, and yeah, this book is worth the hype in my opinion. So of course I had to recommend it because it takes place in college. They're like in 2nd year, or at least she's in her 2nd year, he maybe is in his 3rd, I don't remember, but it does take place in university. Next is Dear Love, I Hate You by Elia Greenwood, I believe that's the author's name. And this, don't ask me the characters' names, but this basically, you kind of follow 2 characters who end up being like accidental pen pals in the library. Like they write these notes in these books to each other, like papers in the books, and they kind of end up having this almost pen pal thing through that. But little do the other person know that it's actually somebody that they hate, and like they hate each other for some reason I can't remember. And then once they find out, it's kind of that push and shove of like they fell for each other over these letters, but they hate each other because of things that happened in the past and even like in the present as we're like watching the story unfold. But it's really good. Next is Havoc by Siem Stunich, and this is a Why Choose with, is it 5 guys and 1 girl, I think. And basically we follow Bernadette, who she ends up basically slowly falling for these 5 guys. The guys are all part of a friend group, and basically are kind of almost like, they almost like rule the school, and she ends up asking them for help with something, and that gets her roped into a bunch of dark and sinister stuff. And yeah, but it all takes place in high school, so it's perfect for this video. Next is Kings of Quarantine by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti, and this basically we follow Tatum, is that her name? I think so, who ends up basically joining this kind of like elite school right before a pandemic happens. Yes, it's inspired by COVID, and she ends up getting severely bullied after finding out that her father was part of the reason why this pandemic started. And then there's basically like throughout this entire thing of her being bullied, she ends up with 4 different guys, 3 of who are part of a friend group and 1 of who is a teacher at the school. So yeah, definitely one to, like, if you're gonna read it, just realize that it's gonna have pandemic vibes. There's literally a scene where they make a toilet paper throne. Yeah, that's just the first thing that popped into my head randomly while talking about this. And the final book that I am going to recommend that takes place in a school setting is Lords of Pain by Angel Lawson and Samantha Rue. I was like, I'm brain farting. Basically, it takes place at this university that each like fraternity is based on like a, what's the word? like a title. So like there's the lords, the princes, the barons, the counts, whatever. And this we are following the lords, and basically we end up following a story who ends up basically becoming the lord's lady, basically becoming like the lady of the house. And but it's dark because it's kind of almost like each individual fraternity is almost like a gang of sorts. And it's story navigating that, and it is a why choose, as there are 3 love interests. And yeah, that's a horrible explanation, but when in doubt, I can never describe this series in general, because it is so fucked up and twisted, and honestly, I don't know what's going on half the time, but I'm like, this is entertaining. But yeah, those are the recs. I honestly don't even know how many that I recommended. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps my channel grow. Also, in the comments down below, let me know what is one book that takes place in a school setting that you would recommend to somebody. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and bye!